Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi, Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This episode, we'll be talking Leeds and Wrexham and Pamela and Super League and Gold Cup and the 2030 World Cup and Moby Dick and much, much more. But first, joining me as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how you doing on this Thursday morning, February 9th, 2023?
Doing well. Good to be here for the real State of the Union this week.
Yes, right? We were, co-opted and overshadowed earlier this week by POTUS and, the State of the Union, which is, by design and in the Constitution and all that. So I watched it. Did you watch it?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. What'd you think? What do you give it grade? We know how much we love to give grades here. What do you give it?
Well, we don't like to get into politics.
Well, it's not politics. I mean, let's just say just in terms of the performance, because ultimately it is a performance.
I thought Joe Biden, he grew into it as the speech went on. It's always a little bit jarring how much he struggles, doesn't exactly have a way with words these days.
Mosse, you don't say. Really? Okay.
But you sort of get used to it. I will say it was very testy. Heckling.
I actually
back
liked it.
and forth.
I liked it. It's reminiscent of over there in England where they scream and yell and do and all that. We actually got to some meat through that. But to your point, it's a pretty low bar relative to him public speaking, so that he got through it and evidently a record number word count over there. So I give him a B. I think a solid B for it.
Good to have you back in LA after
Thank
a
you.
brief sojourn to Vegas.
Yeah, I went in and out to Vegas. I totally did Vegas wrong in that I should have stayed the night. But the reason why we're recording on a Thursday morning here is because I had to go and do an appearance over in Vegas. They have these big conventions, so I went and did an appearance. They had 7-Eleven has this huge convention where they bring in all of their vendors. So everybody that you actually see selling stuff, or all the stuff that you see when you go into a 7-Eleven and all of their sister stores that they have under their 7-Eleven umbrella, all of the different stuff that you can get into 7-Eleven, they bring everybody into this convention. And so, you'll go around and over here is, the alcohol that you can buy, or the Slim Jims, or the condoms, or whatever it ends up being that you can buy in a 7-Eleven. It's there, and it's all designed because they bring in all of the owners of all the 7-Elevens all over the place, and they say you need to have this in your store. And so there's samples all over the place. And I came in for Truly. Have you ever had Truly? It's a drink. It's really good. It's really good. You should try it. And yes, that is. They paid me to do that. So you can drink it or not. It doesn't matter, to me. But that's why I was there, and it was really fun. In and out to Vegas at the MGM into their convention center, and now I'm back. So, did you watch anything or read anything, or what's going on with you? I've gotten a lot of calls and texts about my reading habits now, because I'm talking about going back into the classics.
Didn't watch or read anything of note. I did play pickleball for the first time in my life yesterday. Are you familiar with this pickleball?
Yeah, it's a craze.
Yeah.
If you will. Maybe a fad. I don't know. We'll see.
Reminiscent of chess during the Bobby Fischer days.
Right. Yes. Did you enjoy it?
I did, yeah.
Right, it's fun, right?
I went with my buddy Jordan, the same guy who I walked to downtown LA with.
Yep. Okay.
And he introduced me to it. He's an experienced player, so he showed me the ropes. A lot of rules. You can't step in the kitchen.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of things, but it's very popular.
Very popular, and it's a nice little workout. So it will supplement my.
Yeah, I mean, is it though? It's obviously there's a little muscle confusion if you've never played it before, but the space lends itself to doing less.
Sure.
So, but you enjoyed it.
I did.
Will you play again, you think?
I will.
Oh, good. Look at you, a pickleball fan now. I know there's a lot of people out there that are in the pickleball thing right now. Whether they want to be or not is a different story, but a lot of people are playing it right now. My wife yesterday said, don't we have pickleball rackets or something like that? Because she was looking to play. And I think MLS at one point sent around pickleball, or it might have been the Galaxy. I can't remember who it was, but I feel like we have pickleball rackets somewhere. Did you read anything or watch anything?
No, as I mentioned last time, I purchased those two books on the Middle East, Mossad, and the one on Afghanistan. I'm going to start those soon, but I haven't yet.
Now, you are, as we know, a savant when it comes to the game of soccer. Are you becoming now a savant when it comes to the Middle East and all that? Should I be not concerned, because there's a wonderful and rich history over there, but this is a deep dive, and it continues to get deeper and deeper over there when it comes to what you're reading.
It is my area of focus at the moment.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I mentioned going back and reading some of the classics. So now I am knee deep in The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and Moby Dick. So those are the two ones that are doing right now. I did have a back and forth with a friend of mine who fell on your side when it came to, you mentioned you went to Barnes and Noble, and this question about whether books on tape, the audio, listening to an audio of a book is the same as actually reading the book. Now, the physical action we know is not the same, but it was a little wishy-washy, but ultimately I think he sided with you in that you'll let it go and you'll let it pass, okay? It's not quite the same, but it still counts as reading a book. And so I've started both of those, and we'll see when those get done. From a watching perspective, have you seen the new Pamela Anderson documentary on Netflix?
I have not.
You know who Pamela Anderson is?
I do.
Okay. I don't know, is there anybody out there that doesn't know who Pamela Anderson is?
I've seen her having sex.
Okay. Drink if you were waiting for Mosse to tell us who he's seen having sex with. So it's good. I think it is worth your while, and not just like the titillating part of it, right? The nakedness, they kind of deal with that pretty early. There is a little bit of a weirdness through it that she at times is really kind of she's angry and miffed that people, when she's being interviewed or when she is coming in contact with people, are bringing up or want to talk or ask about her sexuality or the things that she has done and her body, let's be honest. And I think that her lack of self-awareness in terms of the way that she presented herself from the very beginning, I don't buy there. I think it's completely legitimate for Pamela Anderson, when you're talking to Pamela Anderson, to be asking those types of questions, and it doesn't diminish or ignore the fact that she's an actress, that she acts, and that she has incredible talent. And when you watch this documentary, you find out very quickly, especially as you get further along, that she's much more talented than the portrayal of her, which she had every part in playing from the very start, leads you to believe. But it grew on me. So this was one that grew on me. So as the documentary continued on, I got a much greater perspective and ultimately a much greater respect for her as a mother, as an actress, and doing all of these different things. And it kind of ends with her being on Broadway and doing some different things. But man, what a life!
Are you ready to light this candle?
Let's light this candle, my friend. All right. Listen, you can fast forward it if you want. If you didn't listen to it, fine. Here we are. We're lighting the candle here. All right. Where should we start, Mosse? Should we go right to our friend Leeds that seem to lead each and every show nowadays?
Yeah, we begin with Leeds United. Their first match after sacking Jesse Marsch was a midweek Premier League clash at Old Trafford. They had a trio of caretaker managers, Chris Armas among them. They jumped out to a 2-0 lead, Gnonto in the first minute, and then a Varane own goal early in the second half. Manchester United rallied with goals from Rashford and Sancho. It finished 2-2. I was wondering how U.S. fans would react here because a European club fires an American manager. You think there might be a sentiment of to hell with them, but it feels like the presence of these American players makes it where U.S. fans were still all in on Leeds.
Yeah, I mean, I was all in on Leeds. I was rushing around in Vegas at the appearance, watching it on phones, watching it on iPads, because it meant something to me. And even, at times I was there to sign autographs and take pictures and stuff, and there were people in line that were yelling out what was happening, and obviously that going back and forth. So yeah, it was still relevant to me. I don't know about how many people out there, to your point, went off the Leeds boil when Jesse Marsch got fired. But also, to your point, does that mean that Chris Armas is undefeated leading an EPL team?
I suppose. I don't know if he was officially their manager. In all the team sheets, it was this Michael Scubala listed.
Okay, all right. So he's still kind of an assisted. Look, on the surface, this is a good result, right? And keep in mind that Leeds 2 games after they fired Jesse Marsch were away to Manchester United and now home to Manchester United this weekend. Not easy by any stretch of the imagination, especially with what Manchester United is right now. But when they look back, I thought they, once again, it's the same old story in that they played well. They created chances. They went up 2-0, maybe even should have been up 3-0 ultimately, and they let Manchester United back into the game. And this is, as we said, a very different Manchester United now. And so that they were good and that they were able to get back in the game should not necessarily be a surprise. But if you had asked, with or without Jesse Marsch, the folks at Leeds, would you take a point away at Manchester United? And you say, yeah, put that in your pocket. So ultimately, a good point, a good result, but you're left kind of wanting more from this Leeds team.
And on the American front, Weston McKennie made his first start, played almost the entire match alongside Tyler Adams. Brenden Aaronson came on in the second half. I will say, when I saw the Manchester United lineup, I did think they were ripe for the taking, specifically that central midfield partnership of Fred and Sabitzer. They are shorthanded there right now because of the suspension to Casemiro and injuries to Aaronson and McTominay. So that was kind of an odd pairing. It's really 2 8s. There's not a 6 there. So I know U.S. fans don't want to hear that. They want the story to be how great McKennie and Adams are. But I think it did set up nicely for them.
I mean, I think U.S. fans, why are you doing that? Why are you dumping on U.S. fans? That's not true. I think U.S. fans, if you talked about the importance and the difference of a Casemiro versus a no Casemiro situation, I think that they would all understand how good he was. I mean, wasn't it you that when Casemiro made that move, you said you didn't like that move? And he's not only come in and I think played well, but established himself as vital to the success of Manchester United. And when they don't have Casemiro, which was the case the other day, to your point, they become very, very ripe for the picking, even with his crazy things that he just, the rush of blood to the head is just ridiculous sometimes with him.
Yeah, that was another bad take by the soccer savant on this podcast. But I will say, McKennie, I thought, played very well. And I agree with the sentiment that he's made for the Premier League. They're going to love him with the intensity and that bulldog attitude. So you can already see that in this match. He was getting involved in a lot of scuffles throughout the game. So I think he's going to be very successful there.
Do you think that they are buoyed from this result in that now they get to go back home and play them and they will be more confident going out? Or do you think they let one get away here and ultimately 2 games against Manchester United, if you come out of it with 1 point, I mean, you'll take it, but still.
No, I think they have a great chance to get something out of this Sunday game as well.
Okay, all right. What else?
Now, as Jesse Marsch departs the scene, there is another club in a top European league that suddenly has an American manager and American players. New Jersey native Pellegrino Matarazzo appointed at Hoffenheim. He replaces Andre Breitenreiter. Matarazzo was previously an assistant at Hoffenheim under Julian Nagelsmann. He coached in the Bundesliga with Stuttgart, was actually sacked earlier this season, but he gets another chance here. He inherits a Hoffenheim side that hasn't won a league game since October. They're battling relegation. They do have 2 Americans in John Brooks and Justin Che. So will Hoffenheim now be a club that you keep an eye on?
No.
This guy Matarazzo, for whatever reason, is not caught on with U.S. fans. They don't really view him in the same vein as they do, Bob Bradley or Jesse Marsch when they manage in Europe.
Yeah, and he obviously grew up in New Jersey, went to high school in New Jersey, went to Columbia, and he is as American as anybody. In terms of his experience, maybe it's different, and he took roads less traveled than traditional roads traveled by either MLS players or American players or players coming out of the U.S. I don't think people look down on him. I just think that his profile at times has not been enhanced and has not been ignored, but just hasn't been as big as others. But by the way, Mosse, because when he took this job, there was a whole contingent out there that said, well, the U.S. national team job is there, and why wouldn't he be a possible candidate? I'm not saying he shouldn't be a possible candidate, but did you know? Because in this day and age, I mean, the whole, the hand-wringing out there and the pearl clutching when it comes to nepotism at USF, United States Soccer Federation, at just in soccer in general. Connections and relationships and history are found in the structure of absolutely every industry out there. And we actually encourage and we value connections in business, and ultimately soccer is a business. And I'm not saying, look, conflict of interest is not a good thing. It's something to at least attempt to be avoided when you can. But knowledge and experience in the industry that often comes from those connections that we are talking about, that can be beneficial. Do you know who Matarazzo roomed with?
I do not.
You don't know this. Julian Nagelsmann. Okay.
Oh, I thought we were talking in a U.S. soccer context. Sure, yeah, no, I know that him and Nagelsmann are close. That's
but my point is that, is that nepotism? Is that an old boys network? Is that a friend scratching another's back? You're damn right it is, okay? Because he benefited from that relationship ultimately, and opportunities were afforded to him. And I don't begrudge him. Again, it goes back to what I said. These types of connections and these types of relationships are present all over the world. Now, does that mean that he should be the national team coach? I have no problem if he is on the list. Now, he's taken this job and he's off to the races when it comes here, and I hope that he does well. And it should make Americans proud that an American is doing well in this type of situation. And maybe it's worked to his benefit to kind of not completely disassociate, but distance himself from the whole American thing. And some of the baggage that ultimately does bring. And to your point, when people talk about him, they don't necessarily talk about him always in, the American sense of who he is. And maybe that works to his benefit at times, and maybe that is to his detriment at times. But ultimately, this is an American who is doing well and coaching at the highest levels and getting multiple opportunities, and is obviously talented. So congratulations to him on finding a job. However, it ultimately came about. What else, Mosse?
Some news that could impact the likes of Weston, McKennie, and Tyler Adams at the international level. We've talked about how the 2024 Copa America will take place in the United States, and the U.S. will be involved. There's now a proposal for the 2025 Gold Cup to be an expanded 24-team tournament. It would be 16 from CONCACAF and then 2 each from CONMEBOL, UEFA, Africa, and Asia. It would take place across the 16 World Cup host cities, so it would be a dry rehearsal similar to what the Confederations Cup used to be. Your thoughts on this?
I mean, bigger is better, I guess. Not necessarily in all cases, but if you're going to get bigger, bring better quality. And I think that this absolutely does that. If you can hand pick it, if you will, making the Gold Cup bigger, but in doing so, bringing some of the best teams in the world and increasing. What is the problem with CONCACAF? The problem with CONCACAF is the 40-plus teams, the disparity between good and bad. It's a gulf when it comes to quality. And it's just the reality of the situation. Some very small, some very, let's be honest, poor relative to other teams in terms of the national teams. And it makes for oftentimes games with very little competition, especially for the big dogs in CONCACAF like the United States, Mexico, and Canada, and others. So this mitigates some of that and brings in better quality. And as we've talked about time and time again, especially leading up to 2026, the more quality games and the more quality competition that the U.S. can find and or create and manufacture is what we're talking about here, the better it is for the U.S.
Now, if you're a CONCACAF organizer, what would be your dream field? I was thinking about this. Obviously, the two CONMEBOL would be Brazil and Argentina.
Well, obviously, no. Venezuela and Bolivia.
The two UEFA, I would probably go with France and England as the tastiest teams to bring over.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you. And I'm also looking at it from a business perspective and looking at it from a popularity perspective and a cachet perspective. Well, look, these are two wonderful teams. Yeah, I mean they would attract the most amount. They bring stars. They bring known stars, and they are better quality competition than the U.S. Would face against anybody from CONCACAF.
Africa for me would probably be Morocco and Senegal.
Okay, all right, I'll go with that.
And then Asia, maybe Japan and South Korea.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah. Right.
What's interesting about this is I read an article in a Brazilian newspaper which said that FIFA are now planning to launch Gianni Infantino's expanded Club World Cup in 2025 as well. Nothing official yet, but
Right.
the article stated that the next two editions, 23 and 24, would probably be under this current format, and then 2025 is when we would start this expanded Club World Cup. It would be held every 4 years, and ideally, Gianni Infantino wants to have it be 32 teams with 12 European clubs involved. Unclear how many spots each of the other regions would get. I know fans hear this stuff and they get excited, but I have to be that guy to bring up, how are we going to fit all this into a calendar?
We'll figure it out. We always figure. Well, hold on. You're saying the 25 Club World Cup would be the one that gets expanded.
Correct.
But the 25, you're not saying that the 25 one is actually the 24 one that's happening in 25, right?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
it's gotten screwy because of the
Right,
World
exactly.
Cup, so I think they do want to get it back to it being held in its proper calendar year.
So 23 Club World Cup is happening in 23.
I think that's the goal.
That's the goal, is to happen by the end of this year.
Correct.
Okay. Even though we are in the midst of the 22 one right now.
Yes.
Okay, got it. And that the 23 one will also be the normal version, the small version.
Correct.
We have it. And then the 24 one would be the same small version, and then in 2025 it would happen in, I don't know, February or something like that of 2025, but expanded.
But again, can you have it during the European club season and expect these teams to play in it and bring their best play? I don't know how that's going to work calendar-wise. And then in the summer, it's tough because you have international competitions such as this 2025 Gold Cup. So it's tricky.
Money solves not everything, but money solves a lot of things, all right? And so if you make it worth people's while, all right, they will find a way to work it in.
Very quickly, the current edition of the Club World Cup has reached the final stage. It will be Real Madrid against Al Hilal. In the semis, Real Madrid disposed of Al Ahly, the team that had eliminated Seattle, 4-1 final, in a game that was more competitive than the final score would indicate. I actually thought Al Ahly gave a decent account of themselves. In the other semifinal, Al Hilal stunned Brazilian giants Flamengo, although I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek because if you saw my tweet after the game, fourth time in the last 7 editions of this competition that the South American club has lost in the semis, and yet they continue to receive a bye until the semis because this competition back in 2005 was built on the false premise that there are 2 big boys in the field every year when there's just mounting evidence that it's Europe and everybody else, and South America belongs in the pile with everybody else. I know that upsets hipsters. There's nothing hipsters like more than to romanticize South American club football. They parachute in once or twice a year, put on a Copa Lib match at the Bombonera, tweet about how great this is, but take it from a South American that watches this stuff regularly. South American club football is not in a good place right now, and this result was further evidence of that.
Wow, Mosse, just kiboshing. Wow. Yeah. Wow. I love it. I love it. Well, listen, if you do listen, subscribe, watch the State of the Union podcast, then you are educated, because this is not the first time that you have told us this. You have been warning of this now for a number of years, and you have been giving people the truth when it comes to what South American soccer is and what it isn't. So ultimately, when we do have this next Club World Cup at the end of 23, knock on wood that it happens, a team like Al Ahly should definitely be given the benefit of the doubt and given that pathway right through. I mean, they're proving it right now.
Well, it's Al Hilal of Saudi Arabia that has advanced to the final.
Yeah, but okay, sorry. It's Al Hilal. All right, so Al Hilal and Al Ahly. All right,
they are Al Hilal, the rivals of the club Cristiano Ronaldo just signed for Al Nassr.
Got it. Well, who knows? All right, maybe we'll see Cristiano at some point.
Now, on the topic of new competitions being proposed and money talking, the Super League is back.
You don't say.
Yes.
What a surprise.
There's a new proposal on the table. This one would feature 60 to 80 teams, would have multiple divisions, no permanent members. You have to actually earn your way through your domestic league placement. They're selling this as a replacement for the Champions League. At least that's how I read it. and they're saying it would have better cost controls than what UEFA have now. They could actually rein in the PSGs and Manchester Cities. So they think they've put something together that's more palatable, that addresses some of the concerns that people had with the previous proposal. What do you think? Could this gain some traction?
Yeah, it's very confusing, and we don't want to bog down too much in it here, but I don't understand how the cost restraints and the restrictions would actually be implemented. I mean, if they're not being implemented in the original traditional league that you're playing in, how do you put that genie back in the bottle for a different tournament? I mean, it's one thing if you just make a roster restriction, you can only have a certain amount of players. That's easy to do, and you can adjust for different tournaments with different regulations and rules. But if this is all really about cost, then really the cost is relative for the most part in terms of what you are paying players, and the exorbitant cost or the anti-business type of way that's happening. And again, talk about disparity, what some can pay and what some can't pay, and the lack of parity that creates. So if this is designed to create parity, that concept in and of itself is interesting to me because I think it can increase competition and make it quote unquote fairer. It can also, be careful what you wish for, because it can also make it less entertaining. So I don't know ultimately how this gets done, unless, back to the point we made, if you sell it as something that is going to enable you to sustain individually as a club, as a league, as a sport within your country, because it's not sustainable what is going on elsewhere. I think that resonates. Doesn't resonate with the elites, but it resonates with the masses, and we've already seen how if you speak to the masses, you can stop change or you can make change happen.
If nothing else, we might get another Apple TV documentary out of this.
Right, exactly. That's really all that matters.
If Kate Abdo is available.
There we go. It's a great content driver here. But so 80-team proposal, like, again, they're framing it now as it's a meritocracy, and it's not just about rewarding the elites, and there's not protection, but we know that sounds good. In practice, it probably won't be that. But there's different leagues now within this Super League concept. Is that what they're talking about?
I guess
Okay.
There would be like a Super League 1, Super League 2.
I like the original Super League better. All right. Anything else, Mosse?
One last thing.
Yeah.
We were discussing Manchester City and financial fair play in our last pod, and there's a point I failed to make, and somebody called me out on it in the comments section on YouTube, and he's right, so I do want to make it here. The stated reason for financial fair play was to give clubs a more sustainable financial model. They don't like the idea of a rich owner buying a club, spending all his own money, then losing interest, pulling out, and then the club has these big contracts they have to pay, but they don't generate enough revenue to support that, and they go out of business. That's happened a lot across Europe, and since financial fair play was implemented, way fewer clubs have gone bankrupt. So UEFA pointed that as evidence that it actually has been a success. Now, everybody thought another benefit of financial fair play would be reining in the PSGs and Manchester Cities. It hasn't achieved that. So there is a separate conversation to have on that front. But I made it seem like it was all about that when there was this whole other reason for financial fair play, which you could argue actually has been successful.
But also within that time, there have been more billionaires, oligarchs, and nation states types of things, where you could argue that the chances of them getting bored and going away because they're losing so much money is diminished, right?
Sure.
Okay.
That is it.
That is it. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, there's a weekend preview, because all sorts of stuff that is happening, and some stuff that happened this week, so don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back. Let's take a look forward and a little look back here in terms of games that are happening this weekend and games that have happened this week. Where do you want to start here, Mosse?
We begin in England this week. We had some FA Cup fourth-round replays, including everybody's new favorite club, Wrexham. They crash out of the competition. They lost 3-1 away to Sheffield United. They really have to be kicking themselves, because in the original match, they had the lead. They conceded an equalizer, virtually the last kick of the game. And then even in this match, it was 1-1 second half. They missed a penalty to take the lead. So Wrexham are out. Are you willing to admit today on this podcast that you took pleasure in this result?
That I took pleasure?
Yes, the Wrexham thing has gotten to you. It irks you that this is being thrown in your face as evidence of how things should be in pro rel, and American soccer has it wrong. So you took some pleasure in seeing Wrexham knocked out.
Oh, in that sense, yes, because, using Wrexham as a proxy and propping up Wrexham as a reason why everything is wrong with American soccer or American teams, or using it, to make your case of pro rel and all that kind of BS. In that sense, yes. But it doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy the story. It doesn't mean that I don't like a Cinderella type of story, which that's pushing it a little bit in terms of being a Cinderella. And by the way, if you're really into the whole, open tournament cup type of situation, not for nothing, but we have one here in the United States called the US Open Cup, all right? Lamar Hunt Open Cup. So if you really want to get into it, right, despite what the owners of Wrexham will tell you, it has existed and continues to exist here in the United States. No, but I don't like any pleasure. I think they are kicking themselves, but ultimately, despite the difference on paper of what these teams are relative to their lot right now in terms of the leagues they play, it doesn't mean that they can't give a good game to people that are quote unquote, or teams that are quote unquote better than them, which is exactly what they did. But what separates these teams ultimately is that little bit of quality and or that little bit of lack of quality, which we saw, a bad touch in the back, which certainly can happen at the highest level, but it happened here. And next thing you know, you were like, "Oh, this was a great game. We were playing well." And the next thing you know, the ball's in the back of the net. But yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that do take some, I don't know if it's perverse pleasure, but I don't have to care. I don't have to pretend to care about Wrexham anymore, do I?
Well, we can tell you one person, Max Bredo, sent a snarky tweet.
What did he say?
Lost. Something about, I feel so sorry for those American Wrexham fans that.
No, but it did what it was designed to do. The machine and the business that is Wrexham, it worked. It's proof of concept for what the ownership is doing and what they wanted to do. And in no way does that mean that I don't feel that it is genuine in terms of the emotion and the passion and what they felt going through this moment. Not just the fans, but like I said, the owners. That's fine. But what's next? And the fact that ESPN showed it and a lot of people wanted to watch it. What are they watching? Are they actually watching soccer? Or are they just watching a continuation or a spin-off of a TV show?
Incidentally, my father has started watching Welcome to Wrexham and loves it.
There you go.
In the Premier League this upcoming weekend, Arsenal home to Brentford, Manchester City under this cloud now home to Aston Villa, and as we mentioned, Leeds United will host Manchester United. So those are the big games there.
Hold on. Can I just circle back one more time to Wrexham?
Sure.
It's not like they're done. They have a real exciting moment to be looking forward to with promotion. I mean, they're sitting there. It's not assured, but they're sitting there at the top, so they can focus on that. And so there will be more things to celebrate when it comes to what Wrexham is doing. But I don't think that we'll be talking about them in the way that we talk about them constantly now until they achieve that promotion. And then there's that moment. And I do hope that they get promoted. I hope that this works out from a promotion perspective for the owners and for the fans.
Yeah, they're battling for the National League title. Arsenal and City, who I just mentioned, battling for the Premier League title.
Okay,
that's my segue to get us back
wonderful.
on track.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Good. All right. So Arsenal, everything is lined up for them. We had talked about this at the World Cup. Remember where we were worried, or we were not worried, but there was this concern as to whether the World Cup was going to derail the juggernaut that was Arsenal. That has not happened. Okay. And even in the moments when you thought, they've given a sliver of hope and there's a possible there's a possible problem here. Others have not been able to take that opportunity, whether it's Man City, whether it's Manchester United, that those gifts that they were given, they haven't. And so Arsenal and Brentford, I mean, are you okay with that? With calling that a 3-point win? Not easy, but 3-point win.
Nothing easy in the Premier League.
That's nothing easy. Nothing easy. No.
And I do wonder, to go back to Manchester City, if this whole financial fair play controversy will have a galvanizing effect on that squad, at least for the remainder of this campaign.
For who?
Manchester City.
You think it's bringing them together?
It might.
I don't think they give a crap.
In Germany, the best game this weekend, Leipzig hosting Union Berlin. Meanwhile, Bayern Munich host Eric Ronaldo's former club Bochum, and Dortmund are away to Werder Bremen. Dortmund coming off a midweek 2-1 away win over Eric Ronaldo's former club Bochum in the German Cup. Gio Reyna came on in stoppage time, still playing that limited role.
Still came on as a substitute, right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I mean, he's secured that spot and shown, as I said in the pod earlier this week, that this is where he is right now. And I hope he parlays that into starting for the team. But right now, this is who he is.
I'm going to go off script here for a second.
Okay.
It's not going to make Sean Sullivan happy.
Okay.
Eintracht Frankfurt faced Cologne. I must confess, prior to the World Cup, I was not that familiar with Randall Kolo Muani. We know what he did in that tournament. He scored in the semifinal against Morocco, almost the hero in the final against Argentina, denied by Emiliano Martinez, greatest save in World Cup history.
It is. You've spoken. Go ahead.
Yes. But since then, this guy has blown up. He's been incredible. He scored 2 more goals midweek in the German Cup against Darmstadt. He has, I believe it's 14 goals, 13 assists in all competitions this season. He's getting linked to the likes of Bayern Munich and Manchester United. They're talking about a €100 million transfer. So France with yet another attacking star to throw into the mix.
Rich get richer, my friend. My goodness, what a load of talent they have. Yes, and that's why they need to play in the Gold Cup. Yeah.
And we segue to French football. The big midweek result: Olympique Marseille 2-1 winners over PSG in the Coupe de France round of 16, the huitième de finale, as they call this round. Mbappe did not play. He's injured. Messi and Neymar did, but did not play well. The PSG goal came courtesy of Sergio Ramos on a set piece, but it was not enough. So Marseille take it, which they're very happy about. That's a fierce rivalry. PSG crash out of this competition, not playing well with that Champions League tie against Bayern right around the corner.
Well, they can just focus on the league, right?
They're away to Monaco this weekend in Ligue 1, which is not an easy game.
Trap game.
Yes.
Okay. Hey, Sergio Ramos, does he ever play for Spain again?
He might.
No, I know he's left the door open, and he said he's not retiring or anything like that. But I'm saying, do you think that he will ever be brought back into the fold?
I'm going to say no.
Yeah.
But it was a non-starter with Luis Enrique. Maybe that with him departing, your favorite manager, Luis Enrique, that door might have been open again. In Spain, with Real Madrid off playing the Club World Cup, Barcelona have the spotlight all to themselves this weekend. Tough game, though. They're away to Villarreal. They're trying to increase their La Liga lead atop the table. And in Italy, league leaders Napoli host last place Cremonese, so this should be 3 points. And
how dare you?
Napoli continuing on their path towards a first Scudetto since 1990.
Well, I think both Barcelona and Napoli continuing, unless something just ridiculous happens, like, I don't know, they get dinged for, not doing business correctly, and then they get, like Man City, in trouble, and they lose points. But barring anything like that happening, I think that they're just going to cruise to the titles, both of these guys. Anything else, Mosse?
That is it.
All right, let's take another quick break, and when we come back, it's time for Ask Alexi. Don't go anywhere. Okay, welcome back. It's time for Ask Alexi. Use that hashtag Ask Alexi out there on all the social media platforms. By the way, our handles out there are SOTU with Alexi, or you call into our State of the Union podcast hotline, which is 657-549-2297. That's 657-549-2297. What do we have this week, Mosse?
A couple of voicemails. Let's hear the first one right now.
How's it going, guys? This is Will in Virginia Beach. Just a question for Alexi. If you were a young player today, say perhaps in your early 20s, is there a league abroad that you would love to play in that would best suit your style of play and your skill set? Or perhaps a manager that you would see best developing you into a better player? And I'd love to get Mosse's thoughts on this as well. Have a great day, gentlemen.
All right. Thank you for the question, Will from Virginia Beach. I've thought about this in the past. For those that weren't around or didn't know, so back in the 90s, after the World Cup, as I've talked about before, all sorts of opportunities opened up for me, including 3 opportunities to go and play in Europe. Even though I played in a World Cup, I had never actually been on the books of any club team. So this was going to be my first time signing for a club. I ultimately decided there was a opportunity in the EPL at the time, the Bundesliga, and Serie A. Back then, it was very different in terms of Serie A was the place to be. It was all the money. It was all the players. It was all the prestige. It was before the Bosman ruling and the opening of the European Community, and before that migration happened to the EPL. So that was the place to be. There was only one place that I was going to go, and so I went to Italy. I think about the type of player that I was and the type of player that I wasn't. I think it's a pretty easy answer, Will, in that I want to go where the most attention, where the most popularity, where the most prestige, where the most money, and where the most, I guess, credibility comes from. And that right now is the EPL. It is the most popular league in the world. I'm not saying it's the best because that's subjective. Whatever you think it is the best, that's fine. But I think that I would. It's not that if I did it over again, I made the right choice then. But today, in 2023, if I was coming out and the player that I was and the type of player, my ability in the air and my ability on the ground, because the game has changed dramatically. And I would love to be given the freedom and to be given the mandate to play in the way that defenders and center backs are given in today's game, playing out of the back, being rigid in terms of playing out of the back and doing those types of things. Yes, the physical nature of the game in the EPL, the aerial game, all of those things certainly lend itself to a player like myself. And the lifestyle and the culture and the glitz and the glamour and the entertainment aspect of it, I think it would lend itself to the player that I was. It's hard putting yourself in different eras and seeing how you would fare. And sometimes it is not fair, FAR. But yeah, I think that's my answer. What do you think?
Well, the guy asked for my opinion. I wonder if he meant my opinion on where you should play or where I would play.
No, do you, and then you don't have to. Yeah, I mean, you can if you want. Where do you think I should play, Mosse?
Well, you've seen me play in a couple of Fox pickup game scenarios.
Yeah.
So for me, it would have to be an attacking player for PSG and Ligue 1 because, as you know, I don't lift a finger defensively.
Yes,
so.
You need work done for you, and then you will provide the moments of magic. It has become very, very clear in the times that I have seen you play. But it is what we pay for, and it is ultimately that magic can change a game, and Mosse can change a game. So yeah, you would need to be surrounded by as much talent as possible. So yeah, good question there from Will. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Another voicemail. Let's hear it now.
Hey, Alexi and Mosse. This is Travis from beautiful New Braunfels, Texas, between San Antonio and Austin. I had a quick question for y'all. One, if you could change one team to another league, who do you think would be the most entertaining? For me, I think Bayern Munich in the Premier League would be awesome. I think that would be super entertaining. But I was curious about if you had this one choice, barring travel and all that, who would you all choose? Also, just wanted to say I started listening to y'all every night during the World Cup. I love what y'all are doing. I listen to y'all every podcast you record. Thank y'all. Love y'all. Keep doing what you're doing. Bye.
All right. Travis from Texas there. Thank you so much. There's a lot of y'alls there. But that was awesome. And it means a lot that you listened, that you discovered us during the World Cup. I know a lot of people because of the content that we were cranking out day after day, and I've met a lot of people that kind of came to the State of the Union pod through the World Cup, and we appreciate that you have stuck with us after the World Cup. All right, so interesting question here. You mentioned Bayern to the EPL, and I think that's a pretty logical and interesting and completely fair type of choice there, and it would immediately put Bayern in a week-to-week type of competition or level of competition that they don't experience, let's be honest, in the Bundesliga. And that would be fun and interesting to see. And ultimately, I mean, you want teams that are going to make it, as Travis said, interesting and entertaining. So your PSGs and your big teams, certainly. What will be interesting is if you asked me that question about like an MLS team or something like that, I would love to see maybe like and I don't know what the 2023 version of the Philadelphia Union looked like, but the 2022 version of the Philadelphia Union, that would be someone that I would like to see in the EPL and how they would ultimately fare. Because I don't think that the highest level of talent and creativity and entertainment that exists in Major League Soccer would necessarily make for the most entertaining type of EPL team. So I know I'm looking at it on a bunch of different levels here, but no, those are the types of teams that you would want to see. And ultimately what this comes down to, like I mentioned, is putting teams that for the most part rule the roost and just plow through their leagues on a continual and traditional basis, putting them in a league where now instead of having to compete against one or two teams a year relative to everyone else in their league, there's 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 that they actually have to contend with. And what you're really describing here, Travis, is the original version of the Super League, all right, in trying to create something like that. And so that you want that, or that you are even, contemplating this notion, I think it speaks to what the Super League was trying to say, is that people are interested and want to see what would it look like on a week-to-week basis if the best teams or more of the best teams were actually all in the same league. And I think that it's human nature to fantasize about what that would look like. In practice, who knows what it would look like, but it's interesting that you're framing it like this. And really what you're saying is, I want to see all the best teams actually together playing week after week.
Yeah, he took the obvious answer. It would be dropping Bayern into the Premier League. I remember when we used to cover both the UEFA Champions League and the Bundesliga, we used to have this debate every year, just how good is Bayern? Because it's hard to tell, because there are years where they're extra good and then years where they're just normal good, but they dominate the Bundesliga either way. So you can't tell until you get into the knockout stages of the Champions League. So yeah, I think that would be fascinating to drop them.
And to be fair, because you think, okay, well, they don't have any competition in the Bundesliga, and yet they still compete when it comes to the Champions League. And the argument is, well, they can rest players, they can put all of their eggs into a different basket, and they don't have to fight on multiple fronts the way that some other teams. And usually what we're talking about is the EPL. The EPL in terms of parity, all right, it's not even close to what MLS has manufactured, but the EPL relative to other European leagues is the one that has, whether it's created or not, it's just the reality where there's more. And when I say more, there's still only a handful, but it's more than, two when it comes to the Bundesliga, 2 when it comes to La Liga, 1 or 2 when it comes to Serie A. You're looking at 4, 5, or 6 that are the elites when it comes to the EPL.
Although it must be said, Bayern in a dogfight this season, only 1 point above Union Berlin.
We always say this, though. We always say this. All right. And is it really a dogfight?
We'll see.
Yes, or is it just, when you slow down for your younger brother to kind of let him catch up and then leave him in the dust just to kind of really rub it in their face, and you just need a little bit of motivation? Maybe
we'll see.
Anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
All right, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, it's the end of our show, and I'll give you my one for the road. Okay, welcome back. It's the end of our show, and at the end of each and every show, I give you my one for the road. I know Mosse, we're so focused on 2026 when it comes to the Men's World Cup, and obviously hosting it here in the U.S. with our friends from the North Canada, our friends from the South, Mexico. But it will, as important and as monumental and as seminal as it may be, it will come and go, and there will be the next World Cup. And we're already kind of thinking ahead as to where and what that is going to look like in 2030. It's interesting, in Las Vegas, I talked to a bunch of people that were actually in Qatar for the World Cup. And to hear them talk about what their experience in the World Cup, and I know, look, people have different experiences, but the amount of people that I met, not just in Las Vegas, but over the last few months, that said this was great from a pure soccer purist perspective. We've talked about, I met people that went to like 27 games. They were like, yeah, I've went to 27 games. I go to multiple games a day and all that. So just from going to a soccer game perspective, it was the most incredible thing that a soccer fan could have experienced. But it's come and gone, and I don't think we're ever going to see that type of scenario again. As a matter of fact, it's going completely the opposite direction, even starting in 2026, with multiple countries hosting. And that is not going to change. We've already seen it with Euros and with other tournaments going forward, and that is going to be the norm. So we come to find out that in 2030, there is the possibility of Saudi Arabia teaming up with Greece and Egypt to host a World Cup, and it's straddling multiple regions there. Saudi Arabia obviously comes in with a lot of money, so much so that there's even rumors floating out there that they would pay for the infrastructure that these other countries would need to have done when it comes to stadiums and other types of resources sources out there, which could be interesting. But it couldn't be any further from what we just did in Qatar. Now, keep in mind, this is also in 2030, the 100-year anniversary when it comes to Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay, and Chile possibly putting together a bid. And another option is Spain, Portugal, and Ukraine. Sentimental type of favorite when it comes to Ukraine and getting them in. So there's going to be a real fight, and in the best possible sense, for who ultimately comes out with something like this. Well, if you had your way, you're going with the Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay possibility, and maybe even Chile. I mean,
yeah, that's the romantic bid, because the first ever World Cup in 1930 was in Uruguay. Uruguay defeated Argentina 4-2 in the final, and so there's a sentiment that in the 100-year anniversary it should quote unquote come home. Now, none of these countries have the capability on their own, I think, to host a World Cup. So you have to stack a bunch of them together. It started out just Argentina and Uruguay. It's ballooned to Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Chile. And now I've heard Bolivia might even enter the fray. So it might be easier to name which South American countries aren't involved in this bid. The Iberian one is interesting. It was just Spain and Portugal, and now they've added Ukraine, which is it politically incorrect for me to say that feels a tad cynical to me and being a prisoner of the moment here?
No, it doesn't. No, it's not politically incorrect for you to say that or not. I mean, I think there's an understanding as to why Ukraine is being involved in this, and it's going to. No, it's not cynical. It's strategic, shall we say, in terms of making it the world's choice. And I don't know how that would ultimately work if Ukraine was involved, and who knows? Maybe by that time things have been sorted out and Ukraine looks very, very different in a positive and good sense going forward. So I don't know. I mean, my point for bringing this up on One for the Road is that the world is changing, times are changing, and we can grumpy old man it all that we want. But this is the new norm when it comes to hosting these tournaments. From a practical perspective, and we've talked a lot in this pod about business sense and financial realities of what's going on. So for a lot of these countries and these regions, this makes much more sense to kind of spread the responsibility out. But from a romantic perspective, it does mean that we are going away. When we talk about World Cups in the past, we always talk about them relative to one country. Okay, Mexico '86, and we talk US '94. It's always associated with one country. And don't get me wrong, the U.S. could, without a problem, host the World Cup, and we know why. Again, strategically, with Canada and Mexico, that was done. And U.S. is one of the few countries that can continue, if they wanted in the future, to be able to do it alone if they wanted. But this partnership and these joint and co types of hosting scenarios are going to continue on. We look no further than what's going to happen this summer with the Women's World Cup with New Zealand and Australia. And I get it. It makes sense. But going back to the original Saudi bid, if Greece looks at it and says, hey, I can be involved in a World Cup and I can bring all of those people here. And also, it's not going to cost me anything because the Saudis, with their money, they are going to make my infrastructure better. And look, Athens has hosted an Olympics, and we understand that they can certainly do that. You understand why it makes sense to Greece and Egypt. What I lament is that sense of not just community, but culture that is often established in a World Cup. That's going to go away. And you're going to have multiple cultures and very different types of experiences had by people that are going to the World Cup. And that shared experience that has long been such a tradition of the World Cup, that is going to go away. And your experience going to, let's say in 2030, experiencing the World Cup in Greece is going to be very different than in the same World Cup experiencing the game in Saudi Arabia. And that's gonna take some getting used to, at least for me and those of us that have that association. But there will be a generation that will grow up where that's nothing new. A World Cup is hosted by a bunch of different countries, and you kind of pick and choose where you want to go. If you can get between the countries, that's all fine and well. If not, maybe your experience relative to the World Cup is going to be to a specific country as opposed to the entire World Cup. And it may be very, very different than somebody else who goes to that exact same World Cup but goes to a different country and experiences it. All right, so we don't know ultimately where this is going to happen, but all of this is going to happen even with all of our focus on 2026. And it's fun because this generation that we talk about from a U.S. perspective that we kind of think of coming to fruition in 2026, there's also a whole other generation. And we talk about winning the Men's World Cup. You know, I don't know what's going to happen in 26. It might be the greatest thing in the world, but it also might just be another step in that step going forward to that moment, to that historic moment that happens. And while it would be, from a Hollywood perspective, incredible to have that wonderful moment be in the United States while hosting the World Cup in 2026, who knows? It might be in 30, and we don't know. Maybe we'll be in Saudi Arabia. Maybe we'll in Greece or Egypt or Argentina or Uruguay or something like that. But the bidding process ultimately will happen, and 2030 will be named. No matter what, I think it's going to be multiple countries, and as it looks like right now, there's going to be a lot of different people that are, to your point, tugging at heartstrings and strategically having partnerships and connections, again, there's that word connections, that they feel is going to be advantageous to ultimately get this bid. Anything before we go, Mosse?
Incidentally, I received an email from FIFA today. I'm now on all those distribution lists. 100 days out until the Under-20 Men's World Cup, which is in Indonesia, starts in late May. The U.S. is in it. Brazil just qualified. So I'll talk more about that tournament as it gets closer.
And, really traditionally looked at as this is the future and maybe even the present when it comes to really, really good players, both from a U.S. perspective and in general, the players that we see star there and then go on to star for their full national teams. So that will be fun. All right, we will talk to you again next week. Continue to subscribe and to review and to download and to do all those different things. Continue to send us those questions, those Ask Alexi questions out there, SOTU with Alexi on all the social media platforms. And do continue, as Will and Travis did today, to access the State of the Union podcast hotline, which again is 657-549-2297, 657-549-2297. We will talk again next week at the State of the Union here. And until then, and as always, my friends, size the day.